Welcome back to the CannaTech podcast. I'm with Jim Roddy from the RSPA. Good morning, Jim.
Hey, good to see you, Harry. Always a pleasure.
All right. Well, first of all, you're one of our speakers at the CannaTech Expo, June 22 through 24 in Fort Lauderdale. So thank you very much for helping us out and get that show launched.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm definitely looking forward to it. And we were actually just recording a podcast yesterday, not talking about cannabis, but talking about how the managed services world and the retail IT world used to be totally separate, like they were almost strange. And now we're starting to see overlap in terms of, folks in the retail IT space, the point of sale space, adapting managed services best practices. So looking forward to see those worlds colliding from a cannabis standpoint in June.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in the March meeting, the cannabis community over at the RSPA, the talk was dominated by payments. So I'm going to hand it over to you. What was the nature of the conversation?
Sure. So I guess just so folks understand, the way that a lot of VARs in the retail or restaurant space, the way that they make a lot of money and where their recurring revenue comes from is they're responsible for the point of sale system, which integrates the payments, and they get a portion of every swipe that goes through. And so then when they look at a new market, they're saying, I want to be able to control the payments. Well, obviously that isn't the case, from a cannabis standpoint right now. And so that's where the conversation always starts. How do I get credit card swipes? And then if I can't, what are the other alternatives? And so that's a lot of what we talked about in terms of what are the alternatives, whether it's from a crypto standpoint, some sort of debit solution. And then a big conversation was about cashless ATMs. And we talked about that at the March meeting and also at our Inspire conference, where we have some resellers who are doing that, that they are setting up an entire cashless ATM system. But now Visa is starting to crack down on that and saying basically, to some degree, you can't do that. And so that is something that a lot of folks need to look out for. You and I are not attorneys, but that's something I think folks need to be mindful of in terms of there is this alternative payments opportunity. It's a great way to get into a dispensary. And if you're handling the payments when credit cards, when things become federally legal, you can use credit cards. And so you can look from these alternative payment standpoint and the cashless ATMs, and then you just kind of figure out how far am I able to go with this? But if you are able to do it, it's certainly something that is of interest in terms of how do you start handling the payments in this space.
Exactly. Well, final question for you this time. What is a cashless ATM?
Sure. And so you think about, again, I'm not the person who's turning the screwdriver, but it's essentially where right now you go to an ATM, right? You enter your card, you know how this is, and you get the money out.
Right.
Well, this would be a way in terms of you put your card in, instead of the cash coming out to you, it ends up paying for your transaction in that space. So the ATM, it functions as an ATM, but instead of spitting out the money. Now think about it from a maintenance standpoint. If it's all digital, it's way easier for somebody to maintain, right? You can just keep going on and on and on with that because it's all electronic payment. So that's the downside of trying to manage an ATM, or if you're inside a dispensary having an ATM, somebody's got to refill and you can run out of cash. If it's all digital and it's just rerouted somewhere else, you can go that way. So again, we linked in the last notes from the cannabis community, just search, it's a headline, Visa cracks down on cashless ATMs at cannabis dispensaries through MarketWatch. You want to go and read about that. But what folks are saying is, somebody asked, are these things being cracked down on? And the answer is, to some degree, yes. It's not every single cashless ATM, Visa's going after, but they're going after some of them anecdotally is what we're hearing. And so it's something you really have to watch out for. So folks cannot wait for the Safe Banking Act to pass. They cannot wait for these things to become federally legal. And then people wouldn't have to jump through all these hoops. And you'll say, 3 years from now, what's a cashless ATM? People won't even need to pay attention anymore, right? Because it'll be a thing of the past. But it's something that folks should definitely look into, whether you're in it or whether you're considering to be in it. You gotta, make sure you measure twice and cut once.
All right, there we go, Jim. Okay, thanks a lot. We'll talk to you next time.
Thanks, Harry. Always a pleasure.